Since tonight is B'eOmer, and we'll do something a little bit different, and we'll discuss B'eOmer, a word about B'eOmer, also Chassidus about B'eOmer, and so on. First, about B'eOmer, there's a story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It says that his students one time were sitting in the Beis Medrash, and one of their colleagues, who had been a former student but who had gone into business outside of Eretz Yisrael, he comes back and they see that he's very rich, and they were a little bit of jealous. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, "Come." He takes them to a valley and he shows them that it's full of gold. And he says, "If you want, you can take some of the gold." And they all wanted to take. But then he said just one thing, that before you take the gold, you should know that whatever you take, it's going to be part of what you're supposed to get Elam Haba. Because you should know that the Torah is much more greater than gold and silver and so on. And then, of course, the students understood and then they didn't take. The Rebbe asks, why did he have to take them to a valley full with gold and offer them to take the gold? And maybe some of them would want to take it. Just explain to them the greatness of learning Torah, and they wouldn't take the gold. You don't have to go through a whole thing, go on a hike to a valley to show you gold and so on. But that was the greatness of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that although Torah is very great, it's greater than gold and it's greater than silver, and this is what the reward in Elam Haba was, but he also wanted to teach and also wanted to offer the students, maybe the student is not holding at that level to see the greatness of Torah, that it's greater than gold and so on. And therefore he wanted that student as well to also be able to learn Torah in a calm fashion. And therefore he showed them the gold. If they want to take the gold and they're not holding it at the level that they understand the greatness of the gold, the greatness of Torah, they would still learn Torah calmly. They would have money, they would have riches, and be able to learn Torah. And that's the important lesson that Rashbi was teaching them. We can learn from him that sometimes, even though it's made great, sometimes you have to teach each student, even on the lowest student, on the lowest level, you have to teach them on their level and get them on their way to come and learn Torah. That is about the vert. As we said, we're going to do it a little bit differently. So with regards to the Chassidus, we're going to explain the minig of what is brought down, the minig of using of that this children go out into the field to play with a bow and arrow. We'll explain it as the Rebbe explains it, explaining a concept in the Chassidus, using this minig, this custom that children would go out on B'eOmer to play with bow and arrows. Now, the simple reason that it says why they would go out to play with B'eOmer is because it says that in the days of Rashbi, in the days of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, there was no rainbow seen in the clouds. Since it says that in general, a rainbow is a sign that God is not going to bring a flood. And Rashbi, his great merit, protected the generation that there was no need for a rainbow. Therefore, as commemorating that, we play with a rainbow, with a bow and arrow, a keshes, a bow. In Hebrew, it's keshes is both a rainbow, and also the bow of a bow and arrow is also a keshes. So therefore, on his day of his passing, we play with a rainbow, with a bow and arrow. That's one of the reasons given. Yisachar brings this reason. However, the Rebbe asks that seemingly the rainbow itself signifies a negative thing, meaning seeing the rainbow is something negative, that God would maybe have to bring a flood, and we have the sign of the rainbow that no, I'm not going to bring the flood. So it's really a negative thing, and incidentally, halachically, when you see rainbow, you're really not supposed to point it out to other people because it's supposed to be a negative sign. So if so, playing with the bow would be sort of a negative thing, and therefore the Rebbe brings from somewhere else, it's brought in the Zohar that it says before Mashiach comes, there's going to be a great rainbow, great lights, great rainbow in the sky, which heralds the coming of Mashiach. And therefore, to heralding the coming of Mashiach, therefore it's also signified in the rainbow. But the truth is, it's much deeper than that. What's the difference between a bow and arrow and a sword, a spear, or other types of weapons? The sword and the spear were weapons for close combat. The bow and arrow is for distance, right? You shoot the person before they even come close. And the same thing with regards to learning Torah and service of Hashem. We also find in the Targum, it calls davening bow and arrow, meaning that that's a way to fight the negative forces from a distance. Now, there's close combat and there's combat from a distance. In order for the Torah that you learn to be in a proper way, there's two ways of learning Torah. There's one way, and this actually leads us also to what the issue was with the students of Rabbi Akiva. There's one way that you recognize that why you're learning Torah, because it's God's Torah, it's God's wisdom, and I'm learning Torah to be connected to God, to have godly wisdom, and so on. Then there's another way of learning Torah, that you're learning Torah with your own thought, and you're trying to understand every detail and every component of the Torah until you're able to understand it. Now, both ways you're trying to understand the Torah. The question is, what's your starting point? If it's that you're trying to understand God's wisdom, it's God's Torah, and therefore I want to understand, I want to, and it's imperative that I understand whatever is God's wisdom, or is it that I want to understand God's wisdom? And that's the nuance. The difference is that if you're starting off with that it's God's Torah, so then you don't mind if somebody else surpasses you, understands it better, corrects you, because at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's that you really want to understand and get it right, because it's God's Torah, you want to get it right. But if you're starting off that it's with your own ego, trying to understand this wisdom, it's God's wisdom, but you're trying that your ego should understand it, so then the ego can get into the way, and eventually you may not be giving the proper respect to somebody else who corrects you, because some of it has to do with you. Now, what is the solution that you should be learning Torah in the proper way and putting away the ego? So the Alter Rebbe in the Likutei Torah and other places explains that while there's learning Torah, there's other things that have to do as a preparation for the learning Torah. One thing would be giving tzedakah beforehand. Another thing would be going to mikveh beforehand, or the Rebbe points out also learning Chumash and Rashi, meaning chitas, and so on, which are seemingly side things, not related to the actual learning. But when you have this preparation, you are able to put yourself on the side and say, hey, why am I learning? Because I'm trying to understand this godly wisdom. It's all about God. It's not about me. And that way, you're going, even though you're doing things that are from a distance, you are nevertheless able to learn Torah properly. Another thing that we find in the rainbow with a bow is that you have to pull back a little bit in order to go forward. You have to be a little bit low, pulling back, in order that you'd learn Torah in the proper way, putting your ego on the side. And this is connected also to Lag B'eOmer, that we know that the real way of really being able to learn Torah by putting your ego on the side is that you have Pnimius HaTorah, the inner parts of the Torah, Chassidus and Kabbalah, which that gives the person the ability to get close to Torah in a way that he recognizes that it's a God's Torah, that it's not just some wisdom that he's learning, but it's God's Torah, and he's learning it because he wants to know the will of God. Then he's able to get rid of even from a distance, that it shouldn't eventually any negative things in the way of a keshes. So that's from a different perspective of why we have why there is this custom to use the kids go out for with a bow and arrow on Lag B'eOmer. Being this Lag B'eOmer, we'll just reiterate some of the customs of Lag B'eOmer. One custom is that we light bonfires. The reason why we light bonfires is because of the great the great light that was introduced into the world through the teachings of Kabbalah that were introduced in the world through Rashbi. And specifically on the day of his passing, it says that he revealed secrets that were much greater than up until that point. He revealed it at the time right before his passing, to the point that the students couldn't even get close to the house. It was so filled with light, they couldn't get close to it because of what was revealed, the great light that was revealed. Additionally, we mentioned there's the custom of going out with a bow and arrow. Also, there's a custom to eat carobs, or buxer, they call it in other languages. But carobs, you don't really see them around here, but if you do have them, there is a custom to eat it. Since there was a miracle when Reb Shimon ben Yochai was hiding in the cave, what sustained him was that miraculously there grew a carob tree. That sustained him and gave him the energy to survive for 13 years in the cave. So commemorating that, there's a custom to eat carobs. Also, as we've mentioned previously, on Lag B'eOmer, we don't say Tachnun. We also didn't say Tachnun by Mincha. We don't say Tachnun by the day. Lag B'eOmer, you can listen to music. Additionally, there's a custom that the kids, they play with bow and arrows, but there's also, besides the actual playing the bow and arrows, that you obviously don't do it in your house, you're going out into the field. But the custom is sometimes brought down as they would go into the field and play with the bow and arrows. But there's also a component that actually going into the field is also a component of the custom, not just because you don't play with bows and arrows in your house, but because of the field. One of the reasons is that the significance of Rav Shpi's teaching of the Kabbalah, of the inner wisdom of Torah, Pnimius HaTorah, was that the point of Torah is not just that I should learn the godly wisdom, but I should bring it down all the way to the outside, not just into my house, not just into my room, but bring it all the way outside into the fields, into the furthest places that we're supposed to bring the Torah everywhere, to the whole world should be permeated with Torah. And therefore, the custom would be that we would go out into the field, discuss the greatness of Rashbi, and discuss the importance of learning Pnimius HaTorah, which is to uplift the world and bring light into the world until it's refined, until we have the coming of the Mashiach. So just to recap, first we started off with the story of Rashbi, that he has to, it's brought down in the Medrash, that he had a student that came from a far place. He was rich. His other students were a little bit jealous. He took them to the field, to a valley, and he showed them gold, but he told them that any gold you take, that would be taking from your gold from Olam Haba. And the reason why he took them out into the field and didn't just explain it to them was because he wanted even the students who are not yet holding at that level of understanding the greatness of Torah just by explanation, they too would be able to sit and learn comfortably and calmly by having these riches. Then we explained the concept of the bow, which, in addition to the simple reason that he didn't see a rainbow in his days, but it says that before Mashiach comes, the sky will be lit up. There will be a great light, like a rainbow, in the sky, which this is one of the symbols of Mashiach. And this is also the bow. The bow and arrow is also symbolizes the way of how we approach learning Torah in the proper way. That it has to be from a distance. That there's not just the actual learning, but you have to do from a distance. There's other preparatory things that you need to, in order that it should be learning in a way that you put away your ego, not in a way like at the other students of Rashbi, but in the way that Rashbi himself did, that he was able to put himself away on the side. And then we went through the various customs of like B'eOmer, including that we would go out into the field, which is why people have barbecues and so on, which is really showing that the purpose of creation, as it's revealed through Pnimius Satira, is to bring Kedusha and have it permeate even to the outside, even to the field, even somewhere where seemingly there is no holiness, but it's specifically there where we have to bring holiness, and through that we fulfill the purpose of creation, which is making a dir Allah Yisbarach, making a dwelling place for God down here in this world, may be speedily in our days. Have a good night.